Okay, hi everybody. So again, my name is Rick Florence and we're going to be doing a little bit of a video today. Now, I'm not going to do a live one yet. I still have to get things set up so that I can properly show screens and other videos and stuff. And I just haven't got around to it. So what I want to talk about today is a couple of things. One happens to be the founding of the United States. Now we have a celebration every year, so I want to ask you to think about this for a minute. And when I ask you the question, if you can't think of it or don't know, the next question is why not? You would think that this particular question would be a question that every American would know. There wouldn't be a question. You would know immediately. Most of the Americans have been educated in public schools. Now, a lot of people have been educated in private schools, but the curriculums for the private schools, in order for them to be, what's it called? Not certified. I can't remember the name, the word of it, but accredited. So you have to be accredited by the state. So they have to still have the curriculum and what have you that the government provides to a degree. And they add extra stuff, but that's good. So here's the question. When or what document actually founded and created the Union? We talk about the Union, the United States of America, the Union, and they keep talking about the Union. So what document created it? So now when I ask this question, what I usually get is, oh, Declaration of Independence. Well, that's not the right answer because it did not do that. The Declaration of Independence basically declared that the states, the colonies, were actually states and governments and countries. And they were basically separate from the king. And they're on their own as a separate country, and they no longer recognize the authority of the king. But each state did that independently. They weren't part of a union when this happened. They all signed it and they all did it together, but it did not create the United States. So the next thing people tell me is, must be the Constitution. Well, the Declaration of Independence was in 1776. And the Constitution wasn't ratified until 1789. So you're talking about 12 years. So I'm correcting a little section that I misspoke on something, so I'm going to put this in there. We had a civil. We didn't have a civil war. We had a revolutionary war during that time. But as we all know, that the Congress funded that civil war. Revolutionary war with England. And well, I keep wanting to say civil war. I don't know. But anyway, that's what I want to put in. So we'll go on to back to the movie. And was basically the government. So when was that done? So I'll let you wait long enough to think about it. The Articles of Confederation created the United States of America. And that's what it says. It's going to be styled, that's the name of it, Article 1, I think it is, in the Articles of Confederation. So that's when the country was actually founded. And the Declaration, the Constitution was written, well, they weren't really sent there to do that. They were sent there to hammer out better trade situation because they were having problems between the states. There was a lot of issues to deal with, like, well, you're a landlocked state and you're trying to send your goods to the port, and state, you have to go through taxes you. The money is different. Now each state has its own little money, so it doesn't, it's not the same amount of money. This silver coin that's their primary coin might not match the other one. Some states are using paper money, and things like that. So they went to meet up to try to hammer out a better deal, and they just finally threw up their hands and said, no, we need to write a new document. So that's why they wrote the Constitution. Now, a lot of people don't know, well, what was the process? Well, it was in Philadelphia, as everybody knows. I'm trying to remember the name of the building. Liberty Hall or something like that. And I don't think they call it that originally. But anyway, what happened is the original draft was submitted to the Congress, and which was under the Articles of Confederation. So these guys are sitting as Articles of Confederation delegates from their states to this meeting that they had, and they call it the Congress. But so they met up, and they had this document that some of the guys wrote. I can't remember all the ones that wrote it. I'd have to look up their names again. But you would recognize the names. It's when there's one primary. I think it was Madison, might have been one of the primary writers. But you go ahead and look this up on the internet. It's not hard to find. Don't use Wikipedia though. I've seen them. I've tried to put things that are true on Wikipedia, and they come out and delete it. They don't want you to tell you what. They're manipulating you. So be very careful about using Wikipedia for anything other than strictly technical type information, because you never know what they're going to leave out, and that's the main thing. They leave it out. They lie by omission. And now they'll say, oh, they don't lie by omission, but that's fine. That's my opinion. I got an opinion about it, and based on what I can see, they're lying by omission. So I don't even give them any credit, so I don't look at them, and they're always the first thing that searches, and you got to get rid of it. Try something else. Now we can talk about search engines too, but that's a rabbit trail. Let's get back onto the government, the Constitution. So the Declaration, the Constitution was written, and people were submitting changes. So they had the original draft. It came into, and they say, okay, here's what we want to do, and they go, I motion to change these words. So they all read it, and they said, well, I don't like this part. And they spent like the whole summer in 1777 doing this, and it's hot, up there with no air conditioning, and they submitted that they wanted to have an amendment, and they would amend things, and until finally they got to the finished version, and that is how the Constitution was written. Then it was submitted to the states, and then they all ratified it, and there was they said it would be effective if not all those people ratified it, but they waited and got all the states to ratify it. They got them all to do it. So that's when it got approved. In 1789 it was ratified and became the new law of the land. Now what's interesting is that they modified the Union. Now the Articles of Confederation claim that the United States is a perpetual union, which means forever. Well, we had a perpetual treaty with Panama, but we ended up still getting to keep the Panama Canal because we built the Panama Canal, and the United States did. And that treaty's no longer there, and that perpetual agreement, apparently there's really not such thing as a perpetual agreement. Even though they claim that there is, they can obviously be canceled. But the very fact that the Constitution was passed proves that the Union is not perpetual. They could go in there and say, okay, we're going to pass a new Constitution, and they're going to go in there and have a single period on that new Constitution, and they pass that. Then, okay, now there's no rules, and there's not really a Union. So it's kind of a false claim that they said they were going to create this perpetual Union. And they claimed it was perpetual. The Civil War fought over it, and they claimed that was a proof that it was a perpetual union. But the truth of the matter is, it was only a perpetual union because the North won the war. If they had lost the war, then obviously it wouldn't have been a perpetual union anymore. But I digress. That's a separate issue. So anyway, I thought you might want to think about, the fact that the Constitution wasn't what founded the country. And a lot of people don't know about that. Now, what you tell them, sometimes, especially older people, will go, oh, yeah, I knew that. I knew about the Articles. But there's a lot of young people I've run into lately, and they haven't a clue about this at all. And you all have seen videos on the internet where people say, they ask them in the streets, and they can't answer questions. Now, I think they pick and choose, which ones they want to show you. And that can give you a feeling that um, that things are not exactly the way that you think they are. So, for example, they could show you 3 of them and answering really stupid questions, and only show you 4 total answers. So now you get the impression everybody on the street can't think for 2 seconds. So I don't really trust those. They're interesting, they're funny, and I wouldn't want to be the person that was looking like the idiot on the other end of this side of the camera. But it is what it is. So. And I really can't pause this thing too well, so as I have to look around and see what I want to talk about next, one of these days I'll get good as Cliff Hyde. He's pretty good. He's been doing it now for a while, and he's pretty good. I don't know if y'all don't know who he is, go look him up, because he's got some interesting things to say. Now, I don't say I agree with everything he says, and I think he's wrong in some cases, but the bottom line is the man knows how to think. He knows how to look at stuff, and he does a heck of a lot of work getting his information. So, let's see. Yep, pretty much that's it. There was a bunch of different things that happened during that time, but that's the main thing I want to talk about there. Now, there's another issue that is becoming a real big problem lately, and that is inflation, or what people call inflation. So we're going to talk about the money for just a minute. Whoa, well, that's not good. I just kicked the camera, and I'm going to cut that out so you won't see it. So let's talk about money for a minute. The money that we're using in this country, and what does the Constitution say about it? Well, the Constitution says that in Article 1, Section 10, or is it 8? I think it's 10. It says no state shall, and it has a bunch of things listed that it can't do, like can't make a treaty and stuff like that. But it says they cannot emit bills. No, they said they have to use, they can make nothing but gold and silver coin, a tender and payment of debts. So it still says that. So if you all go pull up your Constitution copy or get on the web and search for it, you're going to find out that that's exactly what it says. So that's an interesting thing. Then how is your state accepting this paper money, this stuff right here, in fines, in taxes, paying their bills with it? How are they using it? How are they making you use it in a court of law to pay a fine? Oh, we take these. The Constitution says you can't make anything but gold and silver coin and tender in payment of debt. So I'd say, well, the question is whether the Constitution is really enforced. That's not a different subject, but it's something to think about. But I definitely think they give lip service to it. And actually, I think that the Supreme Court has been making some decisions lately that looks to me like something's changed. We might be going, they might be deciding they want to put the Constitution back, but they can't just do it wholesale. So the Supreme Court's just reversing all this stuff or some of these things in the past that are obviously unconstitutional. And the abortion one's probably one of the biggest one everybody's aware of. And the press tries to tell you abortion rights and constitutional right for abortion and all this kind of stuff. And that wasn't what they held. Even the first time, but the second time, what they held is that it's a state decision, and it was, and it should have been. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives the federal government the power to deal with abortion. At least not in the states. Now, I suppose they could do it within the territory and possessions of the United States, which does not include several states. But anyway, they might be able to do something there because they got exclusive jurisdiction in those areas. But according to the Constitution, now we're going to find as we continue to talk about these things that there's some real questions as to whether or not that Constitution is really and truly anything more than lip service, just to placate we the people, us. But I think it's changing, and I'm really happy to see that. So one of the things, when they were modifying the Constitution, so a congressman would say, hey, I want to propose that I motion that we do this change. Now, there's some books out there and I'll put some links in the description box, and there's some books out there to learn about the money if you're interested. And one of the books that is not just applicable to the money, but also applicable to the Constitution in general is this. You want to know what they were doing? This book right here. You can see it. You move it to the right side. And it's reversed. So I think it's reversed. So I'll have to figure out about that. But anyway, it says the notes of the debates in the Federal Convention of 1787 reported by James Madison. So they ended in 1787, but they did some things in different times. So I'm going to read something to you guys. Now in here, James Madison acted kind of like the secretary for the convention. He just decided to start keeping notes, and he wrote notes of what everybody said. They were writing down, well, what changes were going to be made to the Constitution, and then whether they were what they voted, yes or no. And he kept track of how many different people. And so 1780, well, it says 1787, so it's 1787. So Thursday, August the 16th, is when they had a motion. Now, Article 1, Section 8 lists the powers of the government and the federal government. So Governor Morris, he moved to strike out the words that said and emit bills on the credit of the United States. So it had a list that they could do this and this and this, and there was a section in there that said and emit bills of credit of the United States. The credit of the United States. So they said if the United States had credit, such bills would be unnecessary. If they had not, the bills would be unjust and useless. So it's interesting that there's a particular statement in here. Mr. Butler said he remarked that paper money was a legal tender in no country in Europe, and he urgently urged for the disarming of the government to have such a power. Now he said paper money. He said their intent is to stop the government from having paper money. But what do we got? This is paper money. So we'll talk about this in a minute. So Mr. Reed, he said he thought that the words, if not struck out, would be as alarming as the mark of the beast in Revelations on the country. And Mr. Langdon said he'd rather reject the whole plan than retain these three words and emit bills. So, and there's some other statements in here. I'm going to read them all to you, but it's only like that little bit. These 2 pages, that's it. And then in this particular version of this book has an introduction by Adrienne Koch, K-O-C-H. Adrienne is A-D-R-I-E-N-N-E. And it's on page 470 is where they start talking about it. So we have an issue here. Now there's another part in here in the no bills where it talks about the state power, which would be Article 1, Section 10, and it says no state shall. And they can't coin the money. So the Constitution prohibits states from coining the money, but it also requires that the coin money that they do use has to be gold and silver coin. And in terms of powers of the federal government, they originally put in the draft of the Constitution to allow what they call bills of credit. I'm going to talk about those in a minute. All right. So we look up note. And so it says here, this is kind of interesting. If you want to talk about circular definitions, so we know when we define a word, you can't use the word to define it. But you also can't just do a circular definition. Well, this means this, which means this, which each other. Like note means money, money means note. That's not a valid definition. And so what they're saying here is that this is again on Cambridge.org, and they said a note is a piece of paper money. And they give an example. It says a 10-pound note. And that doesn't make any sense at all. Now, if you go into the legal stuff, legal definition So this is coming from the Law Dictionary. Black's Law Dictionary, second edition. Now, Black's Law was considered, this is an old version of it. As you come forward in time, you start looking in law dictionaries, the historical meanings just start disappearing. The things are not really discussed as what they used to be, as much as they used to be, than they are. But anyway, here's what it said. A note definition. A written statement by an individual to pay a sum of money to another individual or the bearer of the note at a specific period of time. It is a compromise between two individuals. A compromise, I guess it would say it's a contract. The bond that matures in 5 years or less, number 3, a bill of exchange issued by the notary public. And basically, so what they're saying is that a note in the financial world is a promise to pay some money. So when you go down the car dealer and you buy yourself a car, you got to go to finance it, and you sign the what? You sign the note. They'll borrow the money. It's a promise. So that kind of note, the complete name of it is promissory note. You're promising to do this. And this is the contract. And listen, it says it's going to pay US dollars. But the funny thing is, they take these. Now, most Americans think this is a US dollar, but it's not. It says right at the top, Federal Reserve note. Federal Reserve note. It says. Now, if you pull one of these out of your pocket, and I'll give you a second to do that. Just pull it out and have a look at it. You're going to find some interesting things about this piece of paper. And I've run across a lot of people, and they never really pay attention to what's on this document. It says Federal Reserve note. It says United States of America. It says this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, in all capital letters with no punctuation. And in the contract, you don't put the punctuation in there. That can really totally change the meaning or completely eliminate the document of having any meaning. And it has a city on there. It has, this one says it has the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, which is an L right here, this little seal right here. And this one says the United States Treasurer. Now, the interesting thing about a note or an agreement is when two people agree to do something, then they both sign the contract, both parties. But if you look at these notes, these so-called notes that we're using now, I know it says $1 at the bottom, but it has two signatures on here. One is Secretary of the Treasury. Let's see. Yeah, that's on the Secretary of the Treasury. That's on the right-hand side. And the Treasurer of the United States is on the other one. Now, there's two entities involved in here. One's called the Federal Reserve, and the other one's called the United States. And I suppose the third one would be the bearer, but they're not making a contract. So the question, of course, there's a thing called adhesion contracts, which we're not getting into that. So on the left, it says Treasury of the United States. So we know who that guy works for. He works for the United States. Now, he doesn't work for the United States of America. That's the Union. Remember, we talked about that. He works for the United States, which is a different entity altogether. You don't go putting your nickname on legal paperwork. So it's not the United States, it's not the United States of America. And then on the right-hand side, it says Secretary of the Treasury. But it doesn't say Secretary of what Treasury. Now, this one says it's the Treasury of the United States, so that tells you the entity, but this one doesn't. Well, what's the other entity on here? It says Federal Reserve. So the question in my mind is, well, who's the Secretary of the Treasury now? What office are they really holding? Is it Secretary of the Treasury of the United States? Why didn't it say that? Because it doesn't say that. And there's only two parties, and that's the Federal Reserve. Well, the Federal Reserve is a private business. Now, many people don't know that. And one way you know it without even looking it up is if you just figure out when the Federal Reserve was established. It was established in 1913 under some exceedingly shady circumstances. But we aren't going to go into all that. But what we will say is that the Constitution of the United States, which we just discussed was ratified in 1789, it was written in 1787. It says the word dollar twice. Now that means that the dollar existed before the Federal Reserve did. And that means that the dollar cannot be a Federal Reserve note, because the Federal Reserve notes didn't even exist when they were using dollars for 100 years before all this happened. So there's some funny stuff going on with the money. And the thing is, most of the people are not paying attention. They're not working. They're working every day. but they're not paying attention to what they're being paid with. Their contracts all say U.S. dollars. Your mortgage says U.S. dollars. Everything we use says U.S. dollars. But we're getting Federal Reserve notes, and notes are IOUs, or supposed to be. So let's talk about that. So here we have a note. This is an older one. So this one I just showed you. It's a 2021 series. Now the series on the note is not when the thing was printed. That is when what the document, this particular kind, was used. So they used the same exact image and everything for since 1921. I mean, 1921. Since 2021. And even though it may have been printed last week. And the reason is because the people in office, when they change the series. So if a new Secretary of Treasury comes along, or a new Treasury of the United States comes along, then they'll put their signature on there and the date will change on the series. So it's not like a mint mark on a coin. Now this note is a lot different. This is an earlier one. This one is 1934. Okay, it's only $10, right? See it? I can't see the note at the same time. But you can look these up on the internet. There's an awesome book that is hard for you to get. So if you want to ever get them, this book is called Money. It looks like this. It's by a guy named James Ewart, E-W-A-R-T. And it's got these massive pictures of money. They're either bigger or smaller. There's a certain percentage you have to make them for it to be legal for you to copy this. You go copy this on a copy machine, just copy it like it is. That's a federal offense. It's counterfeiting. You can't do that. You have to make it a certain percent bigger than the original, or smaller. I don't know what the smaller is. I just know I think you have to make it at least 33% or the 1/3 bigger for it to be okay for you to do that. So make sure if you ever copy these on the copy machine, make them bigger. Don't get yourself in any trouble. But the funny thing about this particular piece of paper, if you look at the one you guys have in your pocket, and you look at those little words on the left side there, now if you go back later, you can pause it and find out there's a lot more words. And let's put it up close. You can see that's the whole little paragraph right there. And here's what it says. It says, this note is legal tender for all debts public and private, comma, and is redeemable in lawful money at the United States Treasury or at any Federal Reserve Bank, period. Now that's pretty interesting. It actually has a whole sentence on there. And it says it's going to do something. So what does it say? It says, and so let's read the rest of it. So we have the word United States of America just like it's on that. And y'all can look this up on the internet. Pull up one, you can pause the video, go find an old 1934 Federal Reserve note and read it yourself. But it says the United States of America, and it changes the writing. It's all, big and pretty up here, and it's got, it's not like a paragraph. It's got to hunt around for it. But down here at the bottom, it says something else right above the word $10. Right? There's some writing right there. And what that says is, we'll pay to the bearer on demand $10. So this piece of paper promises that the Federal Reserve or the United States government will redeem this in lawful money at the United States Treasury. Now, if you go to the Federal Reserve and say, okay, I want the lawful money, they're going to give you more of these. Well, they're probably going to give you the ones that don't even have that. They're claiming this is lawful money. It ain't lawful money. Might be legal money or legal tender, I suppose. It isn't even that because it's a violation of the Constitution. And any statute that's repugnant to the Constitution is null and void ab initio. And ab initio is the Latin for it from the beginning. So this piece of paper here says you can go down and get yourself $10. So what's $10? That becomes a question, doesn't it? So to make it short, the dollar is a silver coin that has 371 1/4 grains of fine silver in it. That's what they determined when they wrote the Coinage Act of 1792. And just as an aside, did you know what the penalty was for counterfeiting the money of the United States at the time when they passed that statute? It's death. If you made a fake coin, it's death. Now I might submit to you that if you made a coin exactly like the United States silver dollar, including you didn't cheat anybody, the same amount of silver and everything, and you made that coin, I would submit that's not counterfeiting. Because the point of not counterfeiting is to create a contract or a falsity. Well, it's not false because the whole point of it is the money is the metal is the real money, and metal is the content. The metal makes the money valuable. Well, they've switched us over, so as you know, we're not doing that anymore. And so there's a lot of questions with our system, and we're not going to go into how these Federal Reserve notes are created into money today. I might do it another time because it's a bit of a discussion, and it takes a little time. And there's videos out there on the internet that talk about this, but they don't talk about that first thing that I was talking to you about, and that was that the founders actually addressed it. Most of the time in the legal system, they're going to go to the Supreme Court, goes to any court. The court's supposed to determine the intent of the legislators, and they're supposed to look to the congressional records, your legislative record, look at the discussions that they had in the meeting, and find out what the general intent of the founders was. The man who, I guess the first thing you probably would do, I'm sure they got a process, but I would think you would go to the guy who offered the statute or the bill, basically, who wrote it, and then try to figure out the comments. And you could have a conflict. You could say, well, we passed it, I passed it because I believe this reason, and I passed it because of this one, and then I'm getting passed, and now the judge got to figure it out. And I would say that the guy who originally proposed it, his reasoning would be the main one, but it can't be that strict. It has to be reasonable, reasonably interpreted by a court. And that's why we have the layer of a court, so everybody can really look at this closely and see, well, what are they trying to do? But they're supposed to be enforcing what was meant when the law was passed. Because bottom line, if you change the words in a document, if you write a document and you mean something, and then you come along later and try to change the definition of the word, like the crazy people that are out there trying to convince us all that women and men can be switched out, and it just depends on what's in here, not the truth of the matter. That's what you have. You have chaos. And so you have to stay what it means at the time they wrote it, and if we want to change the law, then we repeal the law and pass a new one. That's the way we fix it. So, let's see. There's some books. That book I just showed you, I showed you a picture of, it's pretty awesome. It goes through a lot of different pictures and stuff. And there's some cool history, and I don't know how long we've been talking, so I'm not gonna keep going, but I'll do another one. I'll watch this video too, figure out what I left out, and then we'll pick up and do another one. So I hope you guys have a great day. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and the discussion, and I hope you thought about some of the things that I'm explaining to you and pointing out. We've got to start thinking deeper and longer and understanding things. And if you don't understand the history, then you can't understand the present, and you won't be able to plan a very good future. So we definitely need to be able to understand what's been going on and what's going on in the past. And I'll leave you with this one little thought. Don't you think it's interesting that one of the courses in school that people hate the most is history? But some of the most popular movies are historical based. Thinking about Gone with the Wind and Roots, and there's just tons and tons of them. They're about history and about things that happened in the past, and everybody is so enamored they want to see that. But it's interesting, everybody's really interested, but when it comes to going to history class, they hate it. All these dates and stuff, well, this happened, but they don't tell you why things happen. On this day this happened, on this day this happened, this battle is such and such on this day. Well, think about that. And we will talk to you another time.